Welcome in everyone. Today we're talking about mods for Cities 2. I'm going to list off some mods that I think are really important to expand capability and functionality in Cities Skylines 2. So if you're new, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below with what mods you think need to be added, because I'm for sure not going to cover the entire list of mods that existed just in Cities 1. So first up, the most popular mod for Cities Skylines 1 was Move It, and this is something I would love to have in Cities 2. This was never a mod that I personally thought was going to be integrated into Cities 2. However, the functionality nonetheless is significant to how many of us play. In Cities Skylines 1, Move It gave us the ability to really tailor cities the way we wanted, by allowing us to copy and paste buildings, adjust placements of props, trees, just about anything you could tweak utilizing Move It. Cities 2 relies very heavily on things like snapping to place buildings. Now, obviously you can turn off snapping when relocating a building, but there's still so much Move It has to offer with other things. The roads in Cities 2 operate quite differently from Cities 1. There's a ton of information and snapping options available, but we don't have the ability to always tailor things to the way we want. Maybe we just need to tweak placement slightly or shift a road over, maybe adjust a node, and we're not necessarily able to do that. And not to mention being able to copy and paste a building and adjust its placement along a curved road or a road where the zone breaks would be a really added benefit on top of what Move It typically offers anyway. Now, the second mod that I think Cities 2 really needs is some sort of anarchy functionality. If you're not familiar with road anarchy or any of those mods from Cities 1, I'll give you a brief explanation. The anarchy mods typically allowed you to bend the rules of the game. So maybe a road was placed too close to another road and it was giving you some sort of overlap indication, blocking you from being able to do that. Typically, anarchy would give you a little bit more freedom. In Cities 2, you're going to find that the overlap indicator pops up a lot when you're trying to do things, whether that's placing a slightly elevated road over water, you'll still get the indication, and placing things too close together can often be an issue. One area that I tend to notice it the most is when I'm placing a tree down, it gives me the overlap indication, even though there might just be grass in that space. And that's just because the buildings sometimes allot for a little bit more space around them. So you think it's just grass, but it's actually tied to the building, and you get the overlap indication, meaning you can't put the tree there. So some sort of anarchy mod that could cover road placement, but also give us the ability to place trees, and maybe one day down the road props closer to things would be great. And having that in tandem with Move It would be significant. Now, the next mod I'm going to bring up may not be on everyone's top list, but I think it's still important to have in Cities 2. That mod is Find It. Find It allows you to search your entire inventory in Cities 1. And this is not something we have in Cities 2 unless you use the developer mode, but that can cause crashing and other issues. Now, there's a lot of detailed elements that exist within base game Cities 2, but right now we just don't have access to place these at our own discretion. Now, potentially, Find It could also give us an opportunity to look for growable buildings so that we could place buildings as we so choose through the same sort of search functionality that would exist for props. This would give you just a little bit more control over what buildings you want placed, and maybe utilize buildings to fill in certain spots that otherwise can't be zoned as well as you might like. Something else that I thought would be a little bit more integrated into Cities 2 would be Traffic Manager President Edition. The tools in base game Cities 2 to control certain traffic flow options just aren't robust enough for someone that really is interested in controlling traffic flow as much as we had in Cities 1 with mods. So you have some general control, like you're able to take an intersection and apply stop signs to that intersection, or maybe you could control where sims are turning, but you don't have the same sort of control that we got in Cities 1 with Traffic Manager President Edition, which tended to give you the ability to patch and remedy certain things as well as customize some of your interchanges or intersections or just general road design. Traffic Manager also gave you the ability to help control the AI, giving you opportunities to sort of correct things that maybe didn't always work correctly, especially in Cities 1. Now, Cities 2 has a ton of data and information guiding the AI's decision around how to take roads, what roads to take, and so on. But there still could be some more control over when they're doing things like lane switching, or just general route control. The next mod is sticking closely to our road design, which is Network Multitool. Network Multitool in Cities 1 gave you a ton of functionality specific to just networks. You could add nodes, remove nodes, and tweak so much about what you were doing when it came to networks. While the road tools in Cities 2 are pretty user-friendly and they are pretty intuitive, there's a ton of snapping options. It does lack some basic things like being able to control segment length. Because with Network Multitool, one of the basic functionalities of that mod was to be able to place nodes. Now, if you've ever drawn a road or something like that out and you went to go delete it and it ends up deleting a lot more than you anticipated, that's because you don't have enough nodes along the way. That's not necessarily a problem until you go and you realize I have to redo that whole thing. But this sort of thing happens in Cities 2 as well. Now, going away from just road design, something else that I think would be very, very useful for customization of your cities to give your cities the personality you may be looking for would be something along the lines of theme mixer. So we are able to control a little bit about the placement of our city and the buildings used between European and North American. However, it lacks the ability to really customize that city experience to wherever you geographically want to place your city. In Cities 2, most of the base game maps feel somewhat similar, just changes in geography, but not really textures and colors. And textures are a pretty significant thing to be able to change, especially to customize your map or your city to a specific region of the world. In addition to being able to change plenty of textures with theme mixer, you could also change things like the watercolor, and you could change the LUT used, which was helpful when you're trying to set a city in a different region. For example, the color temperature might be different in the Caribbean versus somewhere Northwest North America. A couple other things I'd love to see Theme Mixer for CS2 have would be something along the lines of the ability to control weather, maybe seasons, and hemisphere. I'd love to see something like 81 tiles added to CS2. I feel like this is something, based on some of the conversations I've seen, that is likely to happen because there does seem to be an expandable area within CS2. I'd also love to see something like Node Controller. CS2 does a pretty good job of figuring out how to align intersections and entrance and exit ramps. I would just like the ability to tweak and polish how some of the angles are done, especially when crosswalks start to get a little wonky and extreme angles. Something else I thought would be really handy to have would be more of a benefit to detailers, but it'd be some sort of tree brush extension to what is already in game. We do have a sort of tree brush in place, but Forest Brush from Cities 1 did a little bit more. It allowed you to select probability of multiple trees being placed at any given time. Additionally, it allowed you to select density. This, in combination with Anarchy, gives you the ability to basically create forests really close to cities, or just add a really quick brush along the side of a highway. In addition to that, whether the functionality is built in or if it's a separate mod, would be some sort of tree control, allowing us to place fully grown trees. And I know this is a sensitive subject because many of you have expressed the love that you have for placing a small sapling and letting it grow. However, there is a side of this where people do want to see fully grown trees placed, even if it comes at more of an expense. For the last mod on this list, I'd like to see something that helps control some of the balances that are happening. Now, this is a little bit hard to define just yet because we're still waiting to see how Colossal Order intends to balance certain aspects of the game, because it does feel like there are some things that need to be balanced. There's just a few things that don't seem quite polished the way they need to be, leading to extra demand for customers and commercial sites, or high rent that just never seems to go away. Additionally, I'm sure there's more control or balancing that needs to happen over imports and exports based on recent conversations. So that caps off the list of some of the mods I think early on would be really cool to have in Cities 2. And this is by no means the real end of the list. I'm sure there's a bunch that I missed, and a bunch of you will disagree with some of the options I've selected. I just think these are a few that stood out to me early on. I also wouldn't take the order too seriously either, although I do think Move It is probably the most critical thing I'd like to see added to Cities 2. So with that, be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below, and I'll catch you next time.